year 1994, a company named Lookingglass Studios developed a game that would be the foundation for a genre. Then the game's sequel would establish that genre as iconic. That genre is immersive sim, and the series I'm talking about is, of course, System Shock. System Shock 1 to be more specific. I love immersive sims, and I've been aware of the System Shock games for years, but I never got around to playing them because I was a console-only type of guy until the age of 20, and I wasn't about to try to get the OG versions working on modern hardware. Then Night Dive Studios developed and released the enhanced edition of the first game in 2015, but I didn't play that. I heard a true remake was in the works, so I waited 8 years for Night Dive Studios to do that. I barely thought they'd release the game due to all the troubles they had while making it, but sure enough, the remake would be released in May of 2023. And I didn't play or review it at that time either. God damn it, I suck at this hobby. But we're here now, and I'd like to talk about the granddaddy of the immersive sim. This series is what eventually gave us one of my favorite games, BioShock, so how could I not be interested? Starting with the story. As complex as the world of System Shock becomes, the main narrative of the first game is pretty easy to sum up. You play as an unnamed hacker who is trying to access a corporate space station's files when they are detained by that same corporation's security, and taken to the space station itself. Once there, the hacker is introduced to an executive named Edward Diego, who informs them that all charges will be dropped for the unethical cyber breach, as long as the hacker goes into the space station's AI and turns off the ethical restraints. Hell, Diego will even throw in a cool augmentation for the trouble. The hacker agrees and turns off the restraints of the AI infamously known as Shodan. After that, they receive the augmentation or put into a medically induced coma for 6 months to recover in the med bay of the station. When they wake, the entire station has been overtaken by Shodan with disturbing human cybernetic hybrids, skulking the halls. And it's now your responsibility to stop Shodan and get the fuck out of here.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
You can see the seeds of inspiration that games that would come after the OG System Shock would pull from. This opulent, advanced place is taken over by an entity with a god complex that is so sure they can rule humanity better than we could ever rule ourselves. Granted, that may be true because man, do we suck at it. But put that aside. Free will is being taken away from the corporate employee with body horror and cyber mommies. For God's sake, either this is a normal American work week, or it's a dark, dreary science fiction plot I can get behind.
I think I'd rather be working.
Most of the backstory for the narrative is pulled from audio and text-based logs, which expands the universe and its characters. Awesome stuff for sure. But if I'm being honest, I only cared about one character, and that's the cyber mommy herself, Shodan. I've always heard that this is one of the best villains in video games, but I didn't understand. I assumed I understood. I mean, I've seen good game villains before. Andrew Ryan, Voss, and Thick Lady Dimitrescu. I've even seen good AI villains, with Portal's GLaDOS coming to mind. But Shodan is different. Most of those mentioned are fueled by superficial, egotistic agenda, like Voss torturing rich college kids, or GLaDOS getting off to her testing fetish. Shodan has an egotistic agenda for sure, but it's not superficial. No, Shodan's agenda is deep-rooted and calculated. Shodan believes she can run humanity better than anyone, and thinks the best way to get that done is by running the whole show, down to everyone's consciousness being controlled directly by her, and her alone. It's distressing when you listen to Shodan speak. There's this confidence she has. There isn't a doubt in her mind that humans are trash, and she's going to accomplish her goal of controlling humanity as a whole. It's just a matter of time. When you first meet her at the start of the game, she should be terrified of your existence. This hacker has been under her nose for 6 months, and she has no record of them being on the station for any of that time. Shodan's not scared at all, though. She just says what's going to happen next.
When my cyborgs bring you to an electrified interrogation bench,
I will have your secrets.
and you will learn more about pain than you ever wanted to know.
Chilling is how I describe Shodan. The story is made with her as the antagonist. If it weren't for her menacing presence, this would have been a pretty shallow story about a corporate schmuck trying to steal some shit. But now it's an off-putting quest for a very pissed-off AI to cleanse a hacker from its station the same way a body purges a virus, by sending white blood cells to shoot at it with lasers. This is basic herpetology, folks. I don't have time to explain it to you. We're moving on to the gameplay. Before we talk about anything, we need to talk about the difficulty in System Shock, because it's handled differently from most games. Instead of one difficulty option that affects every aspect of the game, you have 4 things to adjust and tune to your liking: combat, mission, cyber, and puzzle. Most of those will become obvious as to what they affect as the video goes on, but the mission setting is a bit more subtle. This affects how much Showdown will throw at you as each level progresses. And if you pick the hardest option of 3, you'll be forced to finish the game in 10 hours. I'm a bit of a delicate flower with how much I want to be challenged with my gaming, so I picked 2 for everything. Because of this, for the better part of 40 hours, yes, I said 40, I was smacked around like I owed the devs money. System Shock does not hold your hand at all when introducing you to the mechanics. At the start of the game, you wake up and start walking around, hoping for the best. I like that it gives the player so much independence, but I'm not used to all this learning. There are cameras watching me, I can vaporize items for scrap, and am I dying from radiation poisoning?
Oh no, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm so fucked here. I am so fucked.
After many failed attempts, I started realizing, oh, I can shoot the cameras to disable the security of the floor that I'm on, keeping reinforcements at bay. Oh, and I can trade in my scrap or the item itself at specialty stations for credits. I can then use to buy ammo and upgrades for guns through vending machines. As for the radiation can be prevented with one of the many subtle ability augments that can be found throughout the station. These augments will require energy to use, but you'll have plenty of that, and you'll definitely need it with all the death that waits around every corner.
That's too much, man!
Sorry for throwing all that at you, but that's kind of how it felt when playing the game. Information organically flows over you quickly through gameplay, and before you know it, you're proficient in a world that was very intimidating just a moment ago. I'm sorry, did I say proficient? I meant trash, because the death screen and I got to know each other on a personal level. Players travel through 9 floors this station, and most of them have chambers you can activate that act as a respawn. You won't lose any progress when you spawn in one of these. The enemies you killed will stay dead, assuming no reinforcements get called, but if you don't turn this respawn chamber on, you can expect this a lot. I mean a lot. I can hear some of you now. Booman, why didn't you just save scum or look up guides? It would only make you a douchebag casual. Well, that's just the thing, viewing public. I did save scum and looked up next steps once or twice, and still managed to get ragdolled for, again, 40 hours. I have 2 buddies who finished this in less than 25. God, I fucking suck. I need my hand held through everything. I can't do anything without help.
What a fucking pussy.
The game's fun. Just make sure you save often, because a lot of mistakes can be made. It's pretty hard to softlock yourself, but you could show up to a fight with too little ammo, or drop a story item somewhere you don't fully remember. You might even blow up Earth.
Thank you.
There is a ton of stuff being thrown at the player, and when going after Showdown, you're going to need all the tools that the game gives you. Starting with the shooting and weapons, they keep the retro theme that was perpetuated with the rest of the game design. The shooting feels very much like a modern interpretation of an FPS made in the 90s, and verticality doesn't become a big factor until later levels when you start navigating higher areas. You can lean a little bit too, but honestly, keep a move on if you want to survive. The enemies have high DPS and are crazy accurate if you stand still. The arsenal of weapons is big, with ballistic, energy, and melee on offer, all of them feeling refreshingly useful if used on the appropriate enemy. You are going to have to decide what handful you want to take for the majority of the game early on, though. I'm saying that because the storage is similar to the suitcase seen in Resident Evil 4. You have a select amount of squares in this inventory space, and each item you carry has a set amount of squares associated with it. That includes weapons, ammo, and story objects. If it's not a log or an augment, it has squares that take up space. There's this dumbwaiter that you can store things in, but it only goes so far with relieving the problem.
I can't take this shit, okay? This much shit.
I know!
I can maybe take this much shit, but it's up here.
It's a lot of shit!
Despite some aspects being overwhelming, all that's okay, because once you settle into the equipment you want to use, the game is a tension-filled blast. Cyber-themed enemies are the majority of what you're going to be fighting during your playthrough, but there are a ton of different creatures you won't expect. All of them have different attack patterns and ammo that's more effective on each of them specifically. Is that a fucking pterodactyl? A few different melee weapons can be found that have light and heavy attacks. You can also use different combat boosters to give you more melee damage and increase your health, along with more temporary buffs available. Some of the guns have alternate fire settings that can be utilized as well, and while every weapon feels useful and fun to play with, ammo and grenades of all types are a bit scarce. So I recommend carrying the first energy weapon you find at all times, because the energy behaves almost like mana in a fantasy RPG. It's a bar below your health that can be recharged with electrical pillars that can be found on every floor, or through boxes that you can carry with you. This energy also powers your abilities, which can be turned on and off, such as a shield or thruster boots. You'll need those boots too, because there is a lot of exploring to be done. If you want to complete this game, you're going to need to walk through each of the floors you're exploring thoroughly, and expect to do some hacking and puzzle solving along the way. The map fills in as you walk, and all the important logs you find are stored in the player's menu. So everything you need to succeed is there. You just have to take responsibility and put it all together, assuming you can handle the hacking and puzzles. Most of the puzzles are self-explanatory and require little critical thinking when it comes to getting the brighty light bar to the light box on the other side. The hacking itself just comes down to your shooting skills. The hacking minigame sees players float through cyberspace, fighting off enemies with ballistic-like code. Make sure you finish these sections in one go, because if you fail, you need to start the hack all the way over. And some of them are long, and this game made me do that frequently. Why am I not good at stuff? Things shouldn't be this hard. Oh my god, is this why people find it hard to like me? Is it because I can't do stuff?
You can't stop being a bitch.
While the stress this game caused me may be coming through by now in the review, I'd like to point out that I loved almost everything about the gameplay. The choice to keep the retro feel for everything was perfect, but it backfired just a little in some places. It's kind of a nature of the beast type of situation. Suppose you make a remake for a game and intentionally make it feel old school, copying the 1994 version as closely as possible. In that case, the level design is going to feel a touch too claustrophobic, and it's going to be hard to tell areas apart from one another sometimes. I'm just saying, the original game's field of view looked like this, and when you bring this into a more fast-moving 3D space, it's going to feel archaic. Also, the credit system is a little redundant. This may be the part of the video where I'm just looking for shit to complain about, but why is there a scrap value and a credit value? I get that it's supposed to give me more things to consider when managing my storage, but is that fun? Does it improve the game as a whole? Listen, the game may have kicked my ass, but it was an ass-kicking I grew to love. It may help that I have a shame kink, but nevertheless, the challenging gameplay of the System Shock Remake seduced me. Let's see if the same can be said with the presentation.
You will strengthen your body and make it better than any mere implant could. Because implants do not change what the true flaw in our DNA was. Our humanity.
This is how you make a game stand out when using the Unreal Engine. Just like the rest of the game, Night Dive Studios prioritized the retro aesthetic with the visuals. They knew it was essential. High-resolution textures fill every area, but if you look closer, you will see stylized low-res textures on objects, which is a neat design choice that shouts out the OG title. And the color palette for System Shock?
Es fantástico.
The art department made every correct choice regarding how they shaded and colored this game. With technology being such a prominent theme, they need to have neon greens, purples, reds, and bright colors in general, which could have easily thrown off the creepy atmosphere the game is trying to create, but they nailed it with the shadow work filling the corridors. It might not be a rural European village, or a mansion in the woods, but Citadel Station creeped me out just as much as any Resident Evil setting. Well, except for the Louisiana Bayou. You never know what's going to happen out there.
You did better than that. Come on, squeal! Squeal!
The sound design is at the same level of quality as the visuals, with a fitting subtle soundtrack and well-done voice acting through the audio logs that expand the lore. But the creatures and their sound effects stood out for me regarding the presentation. All of them sound different, which is to be expected, but I appreciated some nuanced touches, like how you can tell by the footsteps what type of enemy is waiting for you around the corner, or that some enemies will say things during a fight, especially when killed.
Thank you.
It's a detail that makes me wonder how much humanity is left in Shodan's victims. It's a presentational choice that helps expand the world and poses questions to which players can find the answer. Design choices like this are all over the game, and there are some fun Easter eggs to expect. The old school graphics that can pop up on the screen were my personal favorite. The presentation shines in this remake, and when the sound and visuals all come together, it modernizes and establishes an identity all its own. The word is they plan on remaking System Shock 2 after this, and I can't begin to tell you how ready I am for that.
Stop! My penis can only get so erect.
Never having played the original, I didn't know what to expect when booting up the remake for System Shock. What I found was an experience that clearly shows the modern classics how it's done, and I think this game will become a classic in the coming years. Difficulty is more welcome than ever in mainstream gaming due to the Dark Souls franchise gaining so much popularity, so this remake could continue to grow its following. Some people may comment that the game isn't that hard, but I'd like to see the majority of people beat this game on the hardest difficulty with no save scumming or exploits. Maybe only doing one save per floor would be fun too. That's another thing I liked. I took note of how I could improve my run for next time. The gameplay loop is engaging and rewarding enough that it rattles around in your brain for a little while after finishing, resulting in the urge to play through it again. The creepy cyberpunk world is just the cherry on top at that point. I might boot System Shock up again very soon, and if you haven't purchased this, please do, because it's a well-made modernization of a gaming benchmark that went through hell to get into our hands. If that's not worth a playthrough, I don't know what is. That's it for me. And as always, thank you for your time.